Good afternoon and welcome. Thanks for joining us today on Facebook Live. My name is Missy Manning. I'm a senior attorney here at TuckerAllen. We're joined today with Kevin Mason. He's another attorney at TuckerAllen in our Kansas City office. Before we get started, I have our usual disclaimers. So this is an educational program. We do them every Friday. We discuss various points of the law. But watching one of these scenarios doesn't mean that we have an attorney-client relationship. We're here just to provide educational information. We would love for you to become one of our clients. You can reach out to us online or you can give us a phone call and we can set up an appointment for you. To that effect, we'll go ahead and get started. Today's theme is Medicaid versus Medicare. Kevin, will you give us a general overview of what those are?
Sure. So just very generally, Medicare and Medicaid, they're two government programs for healthcare. So there's different eligibility and they cover kind of different things for different, classes or groups of people. But just generally speaking, they're both government programs and they're both for healthcare.
Okay. Can you tell me a little bit about Medicare?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Medicare is solely a federal program. Kind of historically, it's been split between Part A and Part B, where Part A was more for hospital care and then limited, nursing home care or hospice care, things like that, generally 20 days worth of that sort of care. And then whereas Part B, it was more of like covered those traditional healthcare costs, like, you had to go to the doctor for your annual checkup or you had to get blood tests, kind of things more like that.
So Medicare, I guess, covers like healthcare, kind of like an insurance plan might,
yes,
but it's through the government.
Yes.
Is that a good way to put it?
I think so.
Do you have to be a certain age to get on Medicare?
Sure. Yeah. So for Medicare, it is for people over 65 years of age. And then you have to have been paying into the Medicare tax, for the past at least 10 years, or not the past 10 years, but for at least 10 years at some point in your life. And, there's some, not loopholes aren't the right word, but there's ways that people under 65 can still be on Medicare. The rail workers union, I think it must be pretty good, whoever is in charge of it, because they can get onto it sooner than 65. If you're younger and you have certain disabilities, blindness is one of them. And then also if you were at like an end stage renal disease, so some sort of, kidney disease, that would be another way that you could get onto it.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So what is Medicaid then?
Sure. So Medicaid is a joint federal and state program. There are some stipulations that the federal government puts on to Medicaid, but then it's on a state-by-state basis how it's administered, and each state kind of has their own rules for eligibility and when you can or cannot be on it. Generally for Medicaid, it covers all types of medical care, and there's different types of Medicaid, and just like there's more than just Part A and Part B of Medicare, there's different types to this as well. Generally, though, it covers kind of all types of medical care, including long-term care, such as a nursing home or memory care community or something like that.
Okay, so I'm going to throw you a scenario here. I know we haven't planned for this, but my grandma, she has a fall. She broke her knee. Mm-hmm. Is she going to be covered under Medicaid or Medicare? Is she automatically in one?
So depending on her age, she's probably automatically going to be in Medicare already. And then it kind of depends on her asset level, whether she'll be in Medicaid or not. She'll probably be Medicare for at least part of it. And then there's the potential to get her onto Medicaid too, depending on kind of.
Okay, so maybe it's more of like a long-term, short-term thing and an asset level thing.
Yes, and Medicaid too, the eligibility requirements for it, as they're a little bit more stringent than just Medicare, where it's like you're 65 and you can be on it.
So what are those eligibility requirements then for Medicaid? It sounds like a great bargain. They're going to pay for, the nursing home care and all that stuff.
Sure. So Medicaid is needs based, whereas Medicare is more kind of that age is the eligibility requirement. For Medicaid, it's more about your needs. So, each state, Missouri, Illinois, Kansas, they all have their own limits that they choose for your asset limits, what they can be. And that your assets have to be under that limit to get on to the program. So as long as you're underneath that, then you'll be good to go and you can get on it. And then you can also, you're more likely to qualify as well if you fall into certain classes of people, like if you were pregnant, or if you're a minor child, or if you're disabled, or if you're over a certain age, then that can help as well get you in.
Okay. So I'm starting to understand the differences between them because it sounds a little complicated, but I think I'm understanding it. Can you tell me about Medicaid eligibility? What is this 60-month thing that I hear a lot?
Sure. So like I said, Medicaid is a lot more stringent to get onto than Medicare. And since it's needs-based, they really want to make sure that the people who are getting Medicaid truly have the need, that they're below an asset limit. And the asset limit that you have to be below to be on Medicaid is very, is low.
Can you give me like a ballpark for Missouri, since that's
yes.
where most of our clients are?
Yep. So like $5,000 for an individual here.
So that is very low.
Right. So it's very low. And it's not saying like you have to go sell your home and then use that money for it. But, there could be a lien. I won't get too deep into the weeds, but Medicaid could put a lien on the home or something after you pass away, or the nursing community, they might require you to have a contract on your home before you can come in there. There's stipulations at different places for things, but yeah, it's very low.
And then I guess I'll give you a scenario, like we'll talk about my grandma again. Let's say that she did break her knee and she's got dementia and she really isn't going to ever be released from the hospital. She needs long-term care, but she doesn't have the money to pay for a nursing home. We found out that it's going to be about 10 grand a month to keep her in a nursing home, and she does not have that much money. Is this where Medicaid steps in? How does that all work?
Sure. So Medicaid would step in after grandma kind of got below that asset threshold for eligibility. So once she dropped into that, and then, it's kind of time is of the essence on Medicaid applications, because you don't want to drop too low and not have Medicaid, because then you can't pay for anything. But if you have too much money still, the Medicaid is going to reject it. And now you have to walk back through this application process again. So the timing you got to line the timing up pretty well on this sort of thing. And the timing is what's most important here, I would say.
So what can you do for my grandma then? If we know that she's going to need nursing home care, she's still got some assets, but we want to plan for the future. What can you do?
Sure. So depending on where she's at kind of in this process, like relating back to that 60-month period that we had talked about earlier, if we're sitting down talking and we're saying, oh man, there's no way that grandma's going to make it to the 60-month period before she needs some of this long-term care, and that kind of changes our planning. If somebody comes in and they say, well, I think I can make it 60 months. I think that'll happen. And that also changes our planning. So, that first scenario, grandma's not going to make it the 60 months. That's where we would want to step in and do some crisis planning. Maybe it would be an annuity that we could buy through a third party. We could use a thing called, that's a half loaf method is what it's called. And that's where we're saying, okay, we're going to be able to protect some of these assets, but we also know we're going to incur a penalty period by protecting these assets, because we're doing all this within the 60-month time frame. So we have to hold out enough money to pay off this penalty period, but we can still protect some of it. So that might be another scenario that we could utilize if we know we have less than 60 months. And let's say we think we're sitting there and we're talking and it's like, well, we might make it to 60 months. Then that's where we can kind of do the whole scale planning. We're not crisis planning at this point. We can protect a lot more at that point. One good way to do that is through like a irrevocable trust. Sometimes people call them like an asset protection trust, but we can kind of tie up some money, put it into a lockbox. The only thing to be aware of whenever you're doing that is that you're putting that money in the lockbox and then you're handing the keys to somebody else. You can't hang on to the keys to the lockbox. You gotta give the keys away to somebody else. But it does, effectively, if you can make it through that 60-month period, it does shield those assets.
Okay, so at the end of the day, no matter what position you're in, if they're not going to make it to 60 months or they are, it's still going to save you money going and getting a plan in place with someone like you.
Yes, yes, it almost certainly will.
Okay. So how important would you say it is to get a plan in place to plan for asset protection and Medicaid eligibility?
I think it really depends on the person's asset level and what their goals and wishes are. I always want to be very careful with any client that I deal with, that I'm making sure that I'm doing what they want and not, maybe doing what I think is best, but truly doing what they want. So, we have to figure out what their goals are. But if their goals are to protect, as much of their assets as they can for, their beneficiaries, their children, grandchildren, friends, whoever it might be, then it's very important, I think, to come in early. Don't wait until you get to that point where you're starting to think like, oh, this is going to be a real possibility here that I'm going to need some long-term care. Because generally speaking, by the time you make it to that point, we're already within that 60-month period, and the planning is going to get a lot harder, and you're not going to be able to protect as much.
Okay, so if I had, for example, like a family farm, like a really big asset that I want to protect and continue on, it's been, a centennial farm, it's been in our family for 100 years, something like that, I come to you and we can put it into an asset protection trust and protect that farm in case I do need to go on Medicaid. That's something.
Yep, absolutely. Something like that, where you want it to stay in the family, and it's been around for over 100 years already. You shouldn't wait to get that protected until you're starting to think about, maybe I do need some long-term care, because you're not planning on selling it. So let's go ahead and make sure that we protect that. And then, we have to be a little bit careful with how we do that, especially if this farm's generating some sort of income, but that's easy to kind of work around.
Okay, what happens if I don't take any steps and we've got that family farm there and I have a fall and I need to go on Medicaid because I've got a huge nursing home expenses and
Sure. So kind of that's the worst case scenario, where maybe nobody does any planning whatsoever and there is that fall, and now we're at the point where you need to go on to Medicaid. It's going to be very, very difficult to protect that farm. We might be able to protect some other assets, but kind of a big asset like that, Medicaid is certainly going to want to get their hands on to get reimbursed for this money that they're paying right now for your care. And so one of the ways that they might do that is potentially after you pass away, they could put a lien on this property and try to force a sale of it so they could get paid back.
that would be awful.
Yes.
So I guess at the end of the day, just to sum it up, Medicaid is more like a long-term thing. It's not necessarily age-based, but it's based upon needs. And so if you're looking at like long-term nursing home stay would be Medicaid, versus
Yes.
Medicare is age-based generally, and it's for more like not nursing home care, but just general doctor's visits, all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Medicare isn't really going to cover much time in a nursing home. 20 days is going to go by, in the flash of your eyes whenever we're talking about potentially needing to be there for years. So absolutely, what you just said is spot on.
Well, I feel like I got a much better understanding of Medicaid and Medicare, and that we really need to set something up in the future to protect assets.
Yes, absolutely.
I think that we'll wrap anything up unless you have something else to add.
Nope, I don't. Thank you, Missy.
All right. Well, I hope everyone else at home found this really interesting and useful information. If you have concerns about this for yourself, for your parent or your grandparent, you can always reach out to us. Our firm is TuckerAllen. You can reach us online and schedule an appointment there, or you can give us a phone call at any of our offices and we'll set you up on there.